It seemed to me, as I got to know her well, that she flirted with the world because flirting was the only real kindness she ever knew or shared. It was her way of being nice, and of making sure that people, men, were nice to her. She believed that there wasn't enough niceness in the world, and she said so, in exactly those words, more than once. It wasn't deep feeling, and it wasn't deep thinking, but it was right, as far as it went, and there was no real harm in it. And what the hell, she was a beautiful girl, and it was a very good smile. No, I lied. There's no one waiting, and no one I should go to. And don't you have any wie soll ich das sagen, any program? Any plan? Not really. I'm working on a book. During the time since the escape, I'd learned that telling people a small part of the truth, that I was a writer, provided me with a useful and flexible cover story. It was vague enough to explain extended stays or sudden departures, and the word research was comprehensive enough to account for inquiries about certain subjects, such as transport and travel and the availability of false documents, that I was sometimes forced to make. Moreover, the cover story guaranteed me a measure of privacy. The simple threat to tell people, at length, of my work in progress usually discouraged all but the most persistently curious. And I was a writer. In Australia I'd written since my early 20s. I'd just begun to establish myself through my first published work when my marriage collapsed. I lost the custody of my daughter, and I lost my life in drugs, crime, imprisonment, and escape. But even as a fugitive, writing was still a daily custom and part of my instinctual routine. Even there, in Leopold's, my pockets were full of notes, scribbled onto napkins, receipts, and scraps of paper. I never stopped writing. It was what I did, no matter where I was or how my circumstances changed. One of the reasons I remember those early Bombay months so well is that, whenever I was alone, I wrote about those new friends and the conversations we shared. And writing was one of the things that saved me. The discipline and abstraction of putting my life into words, every day, helped me to cope with shame and its first cousin, despair. Well, shice, I don't see what's to write about in Bombay. It's no good place, yeah. My friend Lisa says this is the place they were thinking about when they invented the word pits. And I think it is a good place for calling a pits. Better you should go somewhere else to write about, like Rajasthan maybe. I did hear that it's not a pits there, in Rajasthan. She's right, Lynn, Carla added. This is not India. There are people here from every part of India, but Bombay isn't India. Bombay is an own world, a world in itself. The real India is out there. Out there, where the light stops. I'm sure you're right, I answered, smiling in appreciation of the phrase. But I like it here, so far. I like big cities, and this is the third biggest city in the world. You're beginning to sound like your tour guide, Carla joked. I think, maybe, Prabaker has been teaching you too well. I guess he has. He's been filling my head with facts and figures every day for 2 weeks, quite amazing really, for a guy who left school when he was 7, and taught himself to read and write here on the streets. What facts and figures? Ola asked. Well, for instance, the official population of Bombay is 11 million, but Prabhu says the guys who run the illegal numbers racket have a better idea of the real population, and they put it at anything from 13 to 15 million. And there are 200 dialects and languages spoken in the city every day. 200, for God's sake. It's like being in the center of the world. As if in response to that talk of languages, Ola spoke to Carla quickly and intently in German. At a sign from Modena she stood, and gathered her purse and cigarettes. The quiet Spaniard left the table without a word, and walked toward the open archway that led to the street. I have a job, Ola announced, pouting winsomely. See you tomorrow, Carla. About 11 o'clock, yeah? Maybe we'll have dinner together tomorrow night, Lynn, if you're here. I would like that. Bye. Shoes. She walked out after Modena, followed by leers and admiring stares from many of the men in the bar. Didier chose that moment to visit several acquaintances at another table. Carla and I were alone. She won't, you know. Won't what? She won't have dinner with you tomorrow night. It's just her way. I know, I grinned. You like her, don't you? Yeah, I do. What? Does that strike you as funny? In a way, yes. She likes you, too. She paused, and I thought she was about to explain her remark, but when she spoke again it was to change the subject. She gave you some money. American dollars. She told me about it, in German, so Madonna wouldn't understand. You're supposed to give it to me, and she'll collect it from my place at 11 tomorrow. Okay, do you want it now? No, don't give it to me here. I have to go now. I have an appointment. I'll be back in about an hour. Can you wait till then? Or come back and meet me then? You can walk me home, if you like. Sure, I'll be here. She stood to leave, and I stood also, drawing back her chair. She gave me a little smile, with one eyebrow raised in irony or mockery or both. I wasn't joking before. You really should leave Bombay. I watched her walk out to the street, and step into the back of a private taxi that had obviously been waiting for her. As the cream-colored car eased into the slow stream of night traffic, a man's hand emerged from the passenger window, thick fingers clutching a string of green prayer beads, and warning away pedestrians with a wave. Alone again, I sat down, set my chair against the wall, and let the activity of Leopold's and its clamorous patrons close over me. Leopold's was the largest bar and restaurant in Colaba, and one of the largest in the city. The rectangular ground floor room occupied a frontage equal to any 4 other restaurants, and was served by 2 metal doors that rolled up into wooden arches to give an expansive view of the causeway, Colaba's busiest and most colorful street. There was a smaller, more discreet, air-conditioned bar on the first floor, supported by sturdy columns that divided the ground floor into roughly equal sections, and around which many of the tables were grouped. Mirrors on those pillars, and on much of the free wall space, provided the patrons with one of the bar's major attractions: the chance to inspect, admire, and ogle others in a circumspect if not entirely anonymous fashion. For many, the duplication of their own images in 2 or more mirrors at the same time was not least among the pleasures of the pastime. Leopold's was a place for people to see, to be seen, and to see themselves in the act of being seen. There were some 30 tables, all of them topped with pearl-smoked Indian marble. Each table had 4 or more cedar chairs, 60-minute chairs, Carla used to call them, because they were just uncomfortable enough to discourage customers from staying for more than an hour. A swarm of broad fans buzzed in the high ceiling, stirring the white glass pendulum lights to a slow, majestic sway. Mahogany trim lined the painted walls, surrounded the windows and doors, and framed the many mirrors. Rich fruits used in desserts and juices: pawpaw, papaya, custard apples, mosambi, grapes, watermelon, banana, santra, and, in the season, 4 varieties of mango, were displayed across the whole surface of one wall in gorgeous abundance. A vast, solid teak manager's counter presided, like the bridge of a sailing ship, over the busy deck of the restaurant. Behind that, along a narrow corridor, one corner of the frantic kitchen was occasionally visible beyond the scurry of waiters and the sweating clouds of steam. A faded but still sumptuous elegance struck and held the eyes of all who walked through those wide arches into Leopold's little world of light, color, and richly paneled wood. Its chief splendor was truly admired by none but its humblest workers, however, for it was only when the bar was closed, and the cleaners removed all the furniture each morning, that the beauty of the floor was exposed. Its intricate tile work replicated the pattern used in a North Indian palace, with hexagons in black, cream, and brown radiating from a central sunburst. And thus a paving designed for princes, all but invisible to the tourists with their eyes on their own reflections in the dazzling mirrors, revealed its luxurious perfections only in secret to the naked feet of cleaners, the city's poorest and meekest working men. For one cool, precious hour each morning after it opened, and the floors had been cleaned, Leopold's was an oasis of quiet in the struggling city. From then, until it closed at midnight, it was constantly crowded with visitors from 100 countries, and the many locals, both foreign and Indian, who came there from every part of the city to conduct their business. The business ranged from traffic in drugs, currencies, passports, gold, and sex, to the intangible but no less lucrative trade in influence, the unofficial system of bribes and favors by which many appointments, promotions, and contracts were facilitated in India. Leopold's was an unofficial free zone, scrupulously ignored by the otherwise efficient officers of the Colaba police station, directly across the busy street. Yet a peculiar dialectic applied to the relationships between upstairs and down, inside and outside the restaurant, and governed all of the business transacted there. Indian prostitutes, garlanded with ropes of jasmine flowers and plumply wrapped in bejeweled saris, were prohibited downstairs, and only accompanied customers to the upstairs bar. European prostitutes were only permitted to sit downstairs, attracting the interest of men who sat at other tables or simply paused on the street outside. Deals for drugs and other contraband were openly transacted at the tables, but the goods could only be exchanged outside the bar. It was common enough to see buyer and seller reach agreement on price, walk outside to hand over money and goods, then walk back inside to resume their places at a table. Even the bureaucrats and influence peddlers were bound by those unwritten rules. Agreements reached in the dark booths of the upstairs bar could only be sealed, with handshakes and cash, on the pavement outside, so that no man could say he'd paid or received bribes within the walls of Leopold's. While the fine lines that divided and connected the legal and illegal were nowhere more elegantly drawn, they weren't unique to the diverse society of Leopold's. The traders in the street stalls outside sold counterfeits of Lacoste, Cardin, and Cartier with a certain impudent panache. The taxi drivers parked along the street accepted tips to tilt their mirrors away from the unlawful or forbidden acts that took place on the seats behind them, and a number of the cops who attended to their duties with diligence, at the station across the road, had paid hefty bribes for the privilege of that lucrative posting in the city center. Sitting at Leopold's, night after night, and listening to the conversations at the tables around me, I heard many foreigners and not a few Indians complain about the corruption that adhered to every aspect of public and commercial life in Bombay. My few weeks in the city had already shown me that those complaints were often fair and often true. But there's no nation uncorrupted. There's no system that's immune to the misuse of money. Privileged and powerful elites grease the wheels of their progress with kickbacks and campaign contributions in the noblest assemblies. And the rich, all over the world, live longer and healthier lives than the poor. There is a difference between the dishonest bribe and the honest bribe, Didier Levy once said to me. The dishonest bribe is the same in every country, but the honest bribe is India's alone. I smiled when he said that, because I knew what he meant. India was open. India was honest. And I liked that from the first day. My instinct wasn't to criticize. My instinct, in the city I was learning to love, was to observe, and become involved, and enjoy. I couldn't know then that, in the months and years to come, my freedom and even my life would depend on the Indian willingness to tilt the mirror. What, alone? Didier gasped, returning to the table. C'est trop. Don't you know, my dear friend, it is faintly disgusting to be alone here? And, I must tell you that being disgusting is a privilege I reserve, exclusively, for myself. Come, we will drink. He flopped into a chair beside me, calling his waiter to order more drinks. I'd spoken to him at Leopold's almost every night for weeks, but we'd never been alone. It surprised me that he'd decided to join me before Ulla, Carla, or another of his friends returned. In a small way, it was a kind of acceptance, and I felt grateful for it. He drummed his fingers on the table until the whiskey arrived, drank half his glass in a greedy gulp and then relaxed at last, turning to me with a narrow-eyed smile. You are heavy in thoughts. I was thinking about Leopold's, looking around, and taking it all in. A terrible place, he sighed, shaking his head of thick curls. I hate myself for enjoying it so much here. Two men, wearing loose trousers gathered tightly at the ankles and dark green vests over their long-sleeved, thigh-length shirts, approached us, and drew Didier's keen attention. They nodded to him, provoking a broad smile and a wave, and then joined a group of friends at a table not far from our own. Dangerous men, Didier muttered, the smile still creasing his face as he stared at their backs. Afghans. Rafik, the small one, he used to run the black market in books. Books? Passports. He was the boss. A very big fellow, previously. Now he runs brown sugar through Pakistan. He makes a lot more money from the brown sugar, but he is very bitter about this losing of the book business. Men were killed in that struggle, most of them his men. It wasn't possible that they could have heard the remark, but just then the two Afghans turned in their seats and stared at us with dark, serious expressions, as if responding to his words. One of their companions at the table leaned close and spoke to them. He pointed at Didier, then at me, and they shifted their gaze to look directly into my eyes. Killed? Didier repeated softly, smiling even more broadly until the two men turned their backs to us once more. I would refuse to do business with them, if only they did not do such good business. He was speaking out of the corner of his mouth, like a prisoner under the eyes of the warders. It struck me as funny. In Australian prisons, that whispering technique is known as side valving. The expression spoke itself clearly in my mind and, together with Didier's mannerism, the words put me back in a prison cell. I could smell the cheap disinfectant, hear the metal hiss of the keys, and feel the sweating stone under my fingertips. Flashbacks are common to ex-prisoners, cops, soldiers, ambulance drivers, firefighters, and others who see and experience trauma. Sometimes the flashback is so sudden, and so inappropriate to the surrounding circumstance, that the only sane reaction is foolish, uncontrollable laughter. You think I'm joking? Didier puffed indignantly. No, no, not at all. This is the truth, I assure you. There was a small war over this business. See, here, even now as we speak, the victors arrive. That is Bahram and his men. He is Iranian. He is an enforcer, and one of those who works for Abdul Ghani, who, in his turn, works for one of the great crime lords of the city, Abdul Qadir Khan. They won this little war, and now it is they who control the business in passport books. He gestured with a slight nod of his head to point out a group of young men, dressed in stylish Western jeans and jackets, who just entered through one of the arches. They walked to the manager's desk and greeted the owners of Leopold's warmly before taking a table on the far side of the room. The leader of their group was a tall, heavy-set man in his early 30s. He lifted his plump, jovial face above the heads of his friends and swept the room from right to left, acknowledging deferential nods and friendly smiles from a number of acquaintances at other tables. As his eyes found us, Didier waved a greeting. Blood, he said softly, through his bright smile. For a time yet, these passports will be stamped in blood. For me it is nothing. In matters of food I am French, in matters of love I am Italian, and in matters of business I am Swiss. Very Swiss, strictly neutral, but there will be more blood on these books, of that I am sure. He turned to me and blinked once, twice, as if severing the thread of daydream with his thick lashes. I must be drunk, he said with pleasurable surprise. Let's have another drink. You go ahead, I'll sit on this one. How much do these passports cost? Anything from $100 to $1,000, of course. Do you want to buy one?
No.
Ah, this is a Bombay gold dealer's no. It is a no that means maybe, and the more passionate the no, the more definite the maybe. When you want one, come to me. I will arrange it for you, for a small commission, of course. You make a lot of commissions here? It goes. I cannot complain, he grinned, his blue eyes gleaming through lenses of pink, alcoholic wetness. I make ends meet, as they say, and when they meet I get a payment from both of the ends. Just now, tonight, I made the arrangements for a sale, 2 kilos of Manali hashish. You see those Italian tourists, over there, by the fruits, the fellow with the long, blonde hair, and the girl in red? They wanted to buy. Someone, you see him, out there on the street, the one with a dirty shirt and no shoes, waiting for his commission. He put them to me, and then I in my turn put them to Ajay. He makes hashish business, and he is an excellent criminal. See now, he sits with them, and all are smiling. The deal is done. My work for this night is finished. I am a free man. He thumped the table for another drink, but when the small bottle arrived he grasped it for a while with both hands, staring at it with a brooding, pensive expression. How long will you stay in Bombay? He asked, without looking at me. I don't know. It's funny, everyone seems to ask me that in the last few days. You have already stayed longer than the usual. Most people cannot depart the city too quickly. There's a guide, Prabaker's his name, do you know him? Prabaker Carr? The big smile? That's him. He's been showing me around for weeks now. I've seen all the temples and museums and art galleries and a lot of the bazaars. From tomorrow morning he's promised to show me something of the other side of the city, the really city, he called it. He made it sound interesting. I'll stick around for that, and make my mind up then where I want to go next. I'm in no hurry. It's a very sad thing, to be in no hurry, and I would not be so free in admitting it, if I were you, he said, still staring at the bottle. When he wasn't smiling his face looked flabby, slack, and pallid gray. He was unwell, but it was the kind of unwell you have to work at. We have a saying in Marseille. A man in no hurry gets nowhere fast. I have been in no hurry for 8 years. Suddenly his mood changed. He poured a splash from the bottle, looked at me with a smile, and raised his glass. So, let's drink. To Bombay, a fine place to be in no hurry. And to civilized policemen, who will accept a bribe, in the interests of the order, if not of the law. To baksheesh. I'll drink to that, I said, clattering my glass against his in the toast. So, tell me, Didier, what keeps you here in Bombay? I am French, he replied, admiring the dew on his half-raised glass. I am gay, I am Jewish, and I am a criminal, more or less in that order. Bombay is the only city I have ever found that allows me to be all four of those things, at the same time. We laughed, and drank, and he turned his gaze on the wide room, his hungry eyes finally coming to rest on a group of Indian men who sat near one of the entrances. He studied them for a while, sipping slowly at his drink. Well, if you decide to stay, you have picked a good time for it. This is a time of changes. Great changes. You see those men, eating foods with such strong appetite? They are sonics, workers for the Shiv Sena. Hatchet men, I think, is the charming English political phrase. Your guide, has he told you of the Sena? No, I don't think so. A conscious lapse, I would say. The Shiv Sena party is the face of the future in Bombay. Perhaps their mode and their politique is the future everywhere. What kind of politics? Oh, regional, language-based, ethnic, as against them, he replied, sneering cynically as he ticked each characteristic off on the fingers of his left hand. They were very white, soft hands. His long fingernails were black with dirt under the edges. The politics of fear. I hate politics, and politicians even more. They make a religion of being greedy. It's unforgivable. A man's relationship to his greed is a deeply personal thing, don't you think? The Shiv Sena controls the police, because they are a Maharashtrian party, and most of the lower ranks of the police are Maharashtrians. They control a lot of the slums, too, and many of the unions, and some of the press. They have everything, in fact, except the money. Oh, they have the support of the sugar barons, and some of the merchants, but the real money, the industrial money and the black money, that is in the hands of the Parsis and the Hindus from other cities in India and, most hated of all, the Muslims. And here is the struggle, the guerre économique, the truth behind their talk of race and language and region. They are changing the city, a little less and a little more every day. Even the name has been changed, from Bombay to Mumbai. They haven't managed to change the maps yet, but they will do it. And they will do almost anything, join with almost anyone, in their quest. There are opportunities, fortunes. Just in the last few months some sonics, oh, not the public ones, not the highly placed ones, made a deal with Rafiq and his Afghans and the police. In exchange for certain cash and concessions, the police closed down all but a few of the opium dens in the city. Dozens of the finest smoking parlors, places that have served the community for generations, were closed in a single week. Closed forever. Normally, I do not interest myself in the pigsty of politics, or in the slaughterhouse of big business, for that matter. The only force more ruthless and cynical than the business of big politics is the politics of big business. But this is big politics and big business together, in the destruction of the opium smoking, and I am incensed. I ask you, what is Bombay without its Chandu, its opium, and its opium dens? What is the world coming to? It's a disgrace. I watched the men he described, as they concentrated with energetic single-mindedness on their meal. The table was heaped with platters of rice, chicken, and vegetable dishes. None of the 5 men spoke, nor did they so much as look at one another as they ate, bending low to their plates and scooping the food into their mouths rapidly. That's a pretty good line, I commented, grinning widely. The one about the business of big politics and the politics of big business. I like it. Ah, my dear friend, I cannot claim it as my own. It was Carla who said it to me the first time, and I have used it ever since. I am guilty of many crimes, of most crimes, to say the truth, but I have never claimed a cleverness that was not my own. Admirable, I laughed. Well, he puffed, a man has to draw the line somewhere. Civilization, after all, is defined by what we forbid, more than what we permit. He paused, drumming the fingers of his right hand on the cold marble tabletop. After a few moments, he glanced around at me. That is one of mine, he said, apparently peeved that I hadn't drawn attention to the phrase. When I didn't react, he spoke again. About the civilization, it was one of mine. And damn clever, I responded quickly. Nothing at all, he said modestly, then he caught my eye, and we both laughed out loud. What was in it for Rafiq, if you don't mind my asking? That stuff about closing all the opium dens. Why did he go along with it? Go along with it? Didier frowned. Why, it was his idea. There is more money to be made from garrod, brown sugar heroin, than there is from opium. And now everyone, all the poor who were Chandu smokers, they have become garrod smokers. Rafiq controls the garrod, the brown sugar. Not all of it, of course. No one man controls all the thousands of kilos of brown sugar that come from Afghanistan, through Pakistan, into India. But a lot of it is his, a lot of the Bombay brown heroin. This is big money, my friend, big money. Why did the politicians go along with it? It is not only brown sugar and hashish that comes from Afghanistan into India, he confided, lowering his voice and speaking from the corner of his mouth once more. There are guns, heavy weapons, explosives. The Sikhs are using these weapons now, in Punjab, and the Muslim separatists in Kashmir. There are weapons, you see. And there is power, the power to speak for many of the poor Muslims who are the enemies of the Shiv Sena. If you control one trade, the drugs, you can influence the other, the guns. And the Sena party is desperate to control the flow of guns into their state, their Maharashtra. Money and power. Look there, at the table next to Rafiq and his men. You see the 3 Africans, 2 men and a woman? Yes, I noticed her before. She's very beautiful. Her young face, with its prominent cheekbones, softly flared nose, and very full lips, looked as if it had been carved in volcanic stone by the rush of a river. Her hair was braided into a multitude of long, fine, beaded plaits. She laughed, sharing a joke with her friends, and her teeth gleamed large and perfectly white. Beautiful? I think not. Among the Africans, the men are beautiful, in my opinion, whereas the women are merely very attractive. For Europeans, the opposite is true. Carla is beautiful, and I never knew a European man who is beautiful in that way. But that is another matter. I mean only to say that they are customers of Rafiq, Nigerians, and that their business between Bombay and Lagos is one of the concessions, a spin-off is the term, I think, of this deal with the Sonics. The Sena has a man at Bombay Customs. So much money is moving from hand to hand. Rafiq's little scheme is a tangle of countries, Afghanistan and India, Pakistan and Nigeria, and of powers, police and customs and politicians. All of it is a part of the struggle for control here in our cursed and beloved Bombay. And all of it, all this intrigue, grows from the closing down of my dear old opium dens. A tragedy. This Rafiq, I muttered, perhaps sounding more flippant than I'd intended, is quite a guy. He is Afghan, and his country is at war, my friend. That gives him an edge, as the Americans say. And he works for the Waladlala Mafia Council, one of the most powerful. His closest associate is Chua, one of the most dangerous men in Bombay. But the real power here, in this part of the city, is the great Don, Lord Abdul Qadir Khan. He is a poet, a philosopher, and a lord of crime. They call him Qadirbai, Qadir elder brother. There are others, with more money and more guns than Qadirbai. He is a man of rigid principles, you see, and there are many lucrative things that he will not do. But those same principles give him, I am not sure how to say it in English, the immoral high ground, perhaps, and there is no one, in this part of Bombay, who has more real power than he does. Many people believe that he is a saint, with supernatural capabilities. I know him, and I can tell you that Qadirbai is the most fascinating man I ever met. If you will allow me the small immodesty, this makes him a truly remarkable individual, for I have met a great many interesting men in my life. He left the words to swirl for a moment in the eye contact between us. Come, you are not drinking. I hate it when people take so long to drink a single glass. It is like putting on a condom to masturbate. No really, I laughed. I'm waiting for Carla to come back. She's due any minute now. Carla? He said her name with a long, purring roll. And just what are your intentions with our inscrutable Carla? Come again? Perhaps it is more useful to wonder what intentions she has for you, no? He poured the last of the 1-liter bottle into his glass and topped it up with the last of the soda. He'd been drinking steadily for more than an hour. His eyes were as veined and bloodshot as the back of a boxer's fist, but the gaze that stared from them was unwavering, and his hands were precise in their movements. I saw her on the street, just hours after I landed in Bombay, I found myself saying. There was something about her that, I think she's one of the reasons why I've stayed here this long. Her and Prabaker. I like them. I liked them both on sight. I'm a people person, if you know what I mean. If the people in it were interesting, I'd prefer a tin shed to the Taj Mahal. Not that I've seen the Taj Mahal yet. It leaks, Didier sniffed, dismissing the architectural wonder with 2 words. But did you say interesting? Carla is interesting? He laughed out loud again. It was a peculiarly high-pitched laugh, harsh and almost hysterical. He slapped me hard on the back, spilling a little of his drink. "Ha, you know, Lynn, I approve of you, even if a commendation from me is a very fragile endorsement." He drained his glass, thumped it on the table, and wiped his closely trimmed mustache with the back of his hand. When he saw my puzzled expression, he leaned close until our faces were only a few centimeters apart. "Let me explain something to you. Look around here. How many people do you count?" "Well, maybe 60, 80. 80 people. Greeks, Germans,